Hello, I'm Billy Bonds, and today I want to show you what happens when your drive-through windows go bad. I've got a small sample of windows that we've taken out that's previously had repairs on it and is basically just given up and needed changing. So one of the things that's very common is this lock area here. This is the typical bird's beak lock, you know, the little brassy coloured one. You have to turn the handle, it lifts the lock up. You can pull the windows back together and they snap together. Well, these regularly fail because if you can imagine, these windows, they come together and they just get slammed shut, and eventually that's going to give. You can't keep bashing and crashing something without something failing. So this is a repair that we do quite often, where we can actually take the bird's beak lock out, but we have to cut a much bigger hole and opening in the front edge of the door to allow for a hook lock to go in there. And this hook lock is exactly the same hook lock that fits on the front entrance doors of your restaurant. So it's significantly stronger, much more robust, got a very strong, tough, anti-vandal tongue here to stop people from cutting through the lock from outside. That's why they're used on your front doors. So very, very good for the drive-through windows. And of course they take the standard cylinder, which is much easier to source, much easier to replace. Again, if these fail, they can have a thumb turn on, which is very easy for use when the windows are locking inside. The brush strip here, you can see these get absolutely caked with grease and dirt and muck. They're open to the elements. You've got the vehicles passing by, so they get stuck full of particulates from outside, and obviously there is an element of debris and grease in the air, and they go very stiff and rigid and they can fall out and break. So that's a bad failure point. On the underside, you've got this very small, flimsy metal track, which is a simple channel system on the inside. I'm not quite sure if you can see from the video that we're looking at now. Maybe we can get a close-up on this section here, but these tracks regularly fail because they literally run down and they get ground, metal on metal, and they literally fall apart. A not very good system, and they're quite unreliable because of it. Lots of windows fail with these points, and when the windows are standing upright, if you can imagine that upright like this, it allows them to shake backwards and forwards because there's no guide in the bottom of the door. Another failure point is these chute bolts here. Now this one is gone bad, but I can show you a close-up. I've got one here that we've taken out. This is what they look like when they're missing. This is a very regular issue again. So they regularly snap and break and fall out, and of course when they fall out they drop down inside the door, and then the door gets jammed, and of course the staff need to open the doors or the windows and they have to force them, and that causes even more damage. And this is the tiny little chute bolts that are inside, and unfortunately the original manufacturer decided to fit these very low down, so they had to grind the rod. If you can imagine the rod here that goes down into your seal area, they've had to grind a point on the end of it so that it can go into a hole. Well, the problem with this is that there's no guide, and it makes it very wobbly on the lower side of it. If you think about what's in your front entrance doors, this is the same chute bolt. It has a longer rod and a really nice nylon bush on the end, and then there's a separate guide that fits in the bottom of the door underneath that actually makes it go up and down in a straight line. What it means is that this is now a standard piece of equipment. It's not a purpose-made piece of equipment that has no guide. So consequently, if you just stick with what the manufacturer specified in the first place, they'll actually last a lot longer, and that's what we put in your new windows. The other thing that you get a lot of problems with is you get the joints coming apart. Now this one's not, but the joints fail at this top edge here and here, or down at the bottom edge here. When you start to see a gap like the pictures you're about to see, then these joints come apart. At that stage it's time to change your windows. That's really a bad situation because your glass can fall out and they're very unstable. This is another drive-through window, and this is what I was saying, where you get the joints that literally come apart, and you can see that these two sections have literally been popped open by the forces and stresses and strains that these things go through most days of their working life. And of course that can lead on to other nasty things. You can have the glass can become loose, and you don't want to have the situation where the glass falls out. That could be potentially very dangerous. It is possible sometimes to do a temporary repair by putting a brace or a strap across the top of the window up here. That can literally pull these two pieces back together, but it's very much a temporary issue, and obviously it doesn't look very nice, not very professional, and it may not solve the real problem as to why these things come apart in the first place. So that's another really important area where these things can fail. If you see any sort of light or any gaps at the top of these joints here and here, then that's another good serious issue that could cause you some serious concerns, and you should really consider changing these windows. So here we are on a survey. This is how we come and check your windows. This is what we look for. We're looking for the state of the windows. And this is what the staff are having to put up with. It's very difficult to use the windows when the running gear and the drive belt system fails. The drive belt system and the running track that you currently have is very light duty. It's very weak and it often gives up and fails. This is the track that you can see here. You'll see that more detail later on. Hook locks and your bird's beak lock regularly fail and staff need to have security. So a hasp and staple, really, is that the best thing? This is a close-up of the repair that we can do for you. It's quite a lot of work. It takes 2 or 3 hours to change these locks over to a much more suitable, heavier duty hook lock. The hook locks that can come out, you can see there, are missing altogether. And the glass is cracked on this one as well. Glass really shouldn't be left like that. That really does need changing. That's easy to change over, but you just need to call us to have that done. And even if you do have a second hook lock, it doesn't mean they're not susceptible to damage. Because like I say, staff do get busy and then they slam these windows backwards and forwards. It can cause a great deal of damage. Chute bolts that do fall out and fail can cause another real worry about the security on the building. And especially if they drop down inside the window, that can cause your window to jam up. The chute bolts can be improved upon with the manufacturer's standard setup rather than those tiny arrangements that you have in the windows at the moment. So do give us a call and we'll come out and do your free survey and we'll check out your windows and give you a report.